know when you're watching a TV show, and it's like this is like mandatory now in seasons of television, and they do that one episode. It's usually, like 2/3 of the way through the season, and it's usually about kind of a bad guy or like a character you don't like too much.
And then you end up sympathizing with them by the end, and you hate that you do.
Yeah, so we're doing that on this episode. So what we're doing is we have our intro where you and I are together, and we're doing things like normal. And then what we're going to do is you're going to sympathize with me, because then I'm going to go off and you're going to follow this episode where I'm going to be on my own with future, one of everybody's favorite guests on the show, Aiken, and we're going to thoroughly discuss the movie. And then Jordan's going to come back. So it's like a weird, it's one of those episodes. Those are usually rated like, 9 on IMDb. Like those are usually people's favorite episodes.
No, that doesn't make sense. But yeah.
So that's what we're doing today. I would say it's a very special episode. So tune in this evening for a very special episode of ER. That kind of a thing, a presentation.
You think ER ever did that?
No. But that just seems like something they'd say on network television, like a very special episode.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because now we always like to be like, oh, I guess they're doing they're doing this episode, So
the first show that I knew to do that, which is kind of when I started getting into watching adult dramas, was Breaking Bad.
Yeah. When did they?
I don't know, but I just feel like they did that.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't even a whole episode, but it'd be like, man, we're really spending a lot of time with Skylar this episode, and this season I've really hated her.
Sure.
And then by a certain point, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get why she acts the way that she does. And the actress is great. They just made the character so unlikable.
Yeah. It's very funny. But that me mentioning that trend, it is just a little bit funny because I think the trend has actually gone a little too far now this point. Because now it's almost like a requirement. For example, a show I will not watch anymore because it's so incredibly graphic. It's insane. I don't know how I watched how much that I did, but Righteous Gemstones always has an episode in the past, and it's like my least favorite episode of every season.
And then also Mythic Quest has done it every season.
Killed it the first two.
Killed it with the first two. What was the first one?
The first one was the game company that owned the building
with
before
Jake
they owned
Johnson
it.
and Christina Milioti.
Yeah,
or something.
great.
Yeah, the first two were so good. The one of this newest season was like, this feels forced.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. It's especially when comedies do it. It's a thin line, it can be tough, but
I feel like the first two in that season really had something to say, and the one in the newest season just didn't really have anything to say.
Yeah.
Other than, I guess that's why those characters act that way. And it was just like, I don't know.
But I feel like we knew that,
Yeah,
You're talking about the Mythic Quest still?
Yeah, in the newest season.
But we're not here to talk about TV.
But great show.
It is a great show, though. We're here to talk about something else, something special. We exist to prove people wrong when they say that sequels are never better than the originals. And we've been covering a little series called Planet of the Apes. We've been going through the whole smorgasbord.
Smorgasbord?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm listening to a lot of old comedy Bang Bang, and that's one of his bits. He's always emphasizing the wrong word or syllable.
The wrong part of the word.
Yeah. So, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. What's your experience, Jordan?
This was my first.
This was my first.
I can't remember if this is one that I had seen bits on TV or if it's the next one. I feel like it's the next one. Now that I've seen this one.
Yeah.
But
also, you told me it was the next one when you told me that story. But we'll get into that next week.
Gosh, okay. Yeah, so fine. This is my first time.
Do you want to talk at all about it, or do you want to just get right into who made it and all that?
This movie's great.
It's really great.
I loved it. As you heard in the last episode, I freaking loved that movie. Oh my gosh, I was so pumped watching it. And this one is better.
It's like a lot better.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right away at like the first shot of the movie when you saw Ceasar, I was like, all right, like this is, we're going for it. They'd have to do a lot wrong for me to get off this train, and they do a lot right.
I saw. I was looking on Letterboxd, and I was looking at past guests of the show, Tom Lorenzo's review of this movie.
Yeah, I saw his as well.
I really liked it, where he's like, "This movie is anyone can use this movie to make an argument for CGI."
Yeah,
because this movie achieved things because of CGI that you probably wouldn't be able to get through heavy makeup, which is interesting because I do agree with him. But of course, if you've listened to our episodes on the older movies.
Yeah.
You know, we're always like, oh, they're acting through the makeup. It's so crazy how, like, they're really, the performances are so good. And I still hold that to be true for sure. But at no point in either of these movies was I like, yeah, but I think if they just didn't worry about the CGI, it would yada, yada, yada.
No, this is like absolutely pretty integral to this movie. I mean, we're going to talk about it in my discussion with Case. But I really was harping on how, like, the whole Koba scene where he's acting the fake monkey and stuff and then kills him and stuff, you could not get that in makeup. It doesn't matter if it's the Tim Burton, like, insane makeup. You could not get that performance.
No.
So this is definitely a very strong argument.
Because the thing is, and we really praise the makeup even in the Tim Burton movie because it is great.
It's incredible.
But I do think, like, at the end of the day, you know there are people in there.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And this, they actually disappear. Like, it's good enough that we were talking about this while we were watching it, where I was like, you know, if I didn't, Andy Serkis is so transformative, I mean, literally, in movies like this and Lord of the Rings, that I would never have known that he was this unless I just knew that information.
Yep.
You know, I would never be like, oh, that's his voice, or like that's how he looks.
Did you watch any behind the scenes of him acting?
It's crazy.
Oh, I want to see
crazy. There's just a lot. You can look up. A lot of this movie is shot on location.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a lot of pickups, you know, in the studio and stuff like that. But you can
probably
see
for facial,
and certain movements to get them totally right. But
the last movie was Weta.
This movie's Weta as well.
Okay,
yeah. It's just nuts because you're just seeing you're seeing how, like, it would be pretty, like, you know. Like, when you watch the Avatar behind the scenes, since they are in a studio and all that stuff, I'm sure it probably gets a little goofy.
Mm-hmm.
I love those movies. It's great. But since they're, like, in the environment and they're, like, on real horses and stuff, like, and Andy Serkis, like, his presence, you're just like, okay, yeah, Ceasar. Like, you can feel that vibe even just in the B-roll. Like, he's so, like, into it and Shakespearean about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can see that, and it's crazy to just see how, like, the sets are like what we saw in the movie, you know, majority wise.
Yeah.
I mean, why are we not doing more of that? That's the Gareth Edwards thing that he did on Creator. You know, it's like find cool locations and you can have incredible effects. You don't have to make everything CG. You don't have to go like Marvel and be like, we just shoot in this blue room all the time.
Yeah. Do you think Marvel? So I know that they shoot on blue sets anymore, but you know, like, didn't Mandalorian use it's not 360, but
yes,
that weird curved thing? Does Marvel do that now too?
I would imagine that they do.
Yeah.
Which does look good, but I don't know. It's just
there's something about it, funny enough, that is just like it's like movie magic. It feels like it's not movie magic.
Yeah.
When it is, because they're tricking you into having sets and stuff. But I don't know. It's just when I watch the newest Aquaman movie and they get to the bad guy lair, and I'm just like foaming at the mouth because
it looks real and kind of fake,
like a set. It just feels so good.
Yeah, I know.
And I would agree with myself. I would say for this movie too, where the apes live, it looks like a set.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I went and saw Monkey Man, and I was thinking as the movie was going on, it's a really good movie. I liked it a lot. There's a little bit of CG that I noticed, you know. But I was kind of like, oh, it's so interesting that, like, you know, there's like this one shot of this helicopter flying by a camera, and I was like, okay, that's CGI, and I don't have a problem with it. That's not what I'm saying, but it's just funny because it's like it doesn't really have to be in this movie, like, at all. Like there's actually really no reason to have CGI in this movie. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just kind of funny because it's like if this was just made 20 years earlier, that wouldn't even be a discussion.
Yeah.
They would just go find the places that they need to go to, and they wouldn't have like, a fake skyscraper somewhere, which looks 100% real. You would never know. But I just am like, oh, it's just interesting that we're in that world where like even an action movie, like we'll have, probably 100 CGI shots in the movie.
Or you watch a David Fincher movie and the furniture's not even real.
That's kind of its own.
I know that is kind of its own thing.
That's just a madman.
Yeah.
That somehow pulls it off every time. Just about.
Okay. Yeah.
But let's talk about Dawn.
Yeah.
Okay. This movie is directed by Matt Reeves of Cloverfield fame, of Let Me In fame.
Yep.
And then Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
And then he will go on to make...
And Batman, we know.
He'll go on to make War for the Planet of the Apes as well. So he's got these two.
He's pretty good at directing.
He's pretty good. And clearly...
Wait, he did Cloverfield?
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't even realize that until I was researching.
I've only seen it the once. You've not seen it?
I've seen it
You've seen
once, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, he clearly is very good at coming into established franchises and making them fresh again, because he's done it twice to quite effective effect.
Yeah. And I'm sure I've talked about it before, but Let Me In is one of my favorite movies ever.
It's a very good movie.
The book is great too. Would recommend Let the Right One In. And the French movie.
I really want to watch that sometime.
Is it French?
I don't.
Because the book's Swedish.
Oh, no, I think the movie's Swedish.
Okay. That one's good too.
Yeah.
I like Let Me In more. He just captures the mood so well.
I think that's the rare opinion. I think everybody likes the original
Let the Right
more.
One In.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Let Me In so good.
But no, it's really good. Who's the girl in it?
Chloe Grace Moretz.
Okay, yeah.
If you're hungry for a slow burn horror.
If you're thirsty.
Oh, yeah. If you're thirsty for a slow burn horror and you like vampires. You like vampires.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it.
Watch that movie.
So this movie is written by, again, Amanda Silver and Rick Jaffa. So, like, by all accounts...
Rick Jaffa.
Wyatt Rupert, the director of Rise, was going to direct this movie.
Okay.
And they're going along, and then they just get to this point where they've established that they're going to put it out in May of 2014, and he's just like, I just can't do it.
In time? Like, it's just too quick for him? Okay.
And so in 2012, in October, they get Matt Reeves on board. And then he has Mark Bomback, who's one of the writers on The Wolverine, come in and, like, rewrite.
Oh, cool.
And rework the script.
Okay.
So he's making this movie in less than 2 years.
What? That's crazy.
Right? October 2012 to July. Yeah, less than 2 years he's making this movie. And it turned, you would never notice. You would think that he'd been working on this movie for like 5 years. Cinematography is by Michael.
Wait, what year is this again?
2014.
Okay.
Just a scant 4 months before Interstellar would hit the theaters. Cinematography is by Michael Saracen, who did Saracen, who did Rambo 3 and Prisoner of Azkaban. The music is by Michael Giacchino. The music is good in this movie.
It is.
And it kind of, like, as you said, it kind of harkens back to the original. I don't even know if it's replicating any themes, but I think
don't know either. But it just feels like it's reminiscent of.
Yeah, I think it's the use of the marimba.
Yes, I agree.
Is it the marimba that was in the score?
I don't know. You're the musician. But
I think it was marimba.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. No, it's not. I don't think it's marimba, and I don't think it's xylophone. I can't recall what the instrument is, but, it's a
Whatever
mallet.
It is, it worked.
Yeah, and it just feels old. I mean, it's sort of like, in the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes trailer, like something about that score, like it came on and I was like, oh yeah, this score. I've only seen the original movie, and it's definitely not a theme from the original movie. And it made me feel like, oh yeah, this whole thing, oh, we're so close. We only have one more ape movie, and then we're caught up. This movie came out July 11th, 2014. $170 million budget. Pretty big.
Yeah.
Makes 208 in the US.
Yeah.
Not the best compared to 170, but that's still well, I guess that's a big hit. It's just
Well, then I'm sure they made a lot of money worldwide.
Well, worldwide the thing makes 710.
Yeah.
That's a big hit.
And that's why we get another one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 208 domestic is good. It's just that's just a huge budget.
Yeah.
I did want to point out, and I didn't recognize her from anything else, but Karen Konoval is Maurice.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to say that because she
looks familiar.
Maurice
She's in
is
stuff.
so good.
She's in X-Files.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like constantly or like
let me look it up.
Oh, I don't care that much. I just thought you would.
I just can't tell.
Okay.
But it's hard to tell. Oh, she's in X-Files a lot as different things.
Okay, so you personally have
three
seen
episodes.
Her a lot.
Yeah, that's probably what I'm recognizing her from.
Okay, and then it sounds like despite the fact that he's making this movie so quickly, I don't really have anything beyond the fact that it's just a huge undertaking of special effects. It's I was watching the Screen Artists react, and they had a guy from Weta.
What did they do? Like which part of the movie did they look at?
They were looking at like the opening shot with Ceasar.
Okay.
And I'm actually forgetting anything else.
The tank?
No, they were just looking at a couple shots, and they were also doing War and Rise. So they were kind of, or no, they didn't do War. They did Rise and this one. Mm-hmm. But they had one of the guys from Weta, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I did that shot, and I did this shot." And they were showing the apes like running at the battle at the end of the movie.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so basically, like one of the guys. So I'm just kind of assuming probably amongst VFX people at least, it's like kind of a landmark. Like holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
I forget his name, but one of the guys said like this was the culmination of like your character work from Lord of the Rings, and then your work on like King Kong with like King Kong and all that with Peter Jackson. It's like it all culminates into this perfect mix of both.
Oh, does King Kong look good?
Well, they showed a shot from it, and I was like, "Holy cow!" In 2005, a movie looks that good. I would love to watch that again.
Every time we bring it up, that's always what you say.
Yeah,
and then we never do anything
forget
about it. Well, we're full ape heads now, so we should watch it.
Yeah, just keep the ape.
He is our king. Well, Caesar's our king.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's just like a total culmination because they even said like Rise is like almost there, but then Dawn is like it's very fully realized in Dawn.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that, and it does feel like, I mean, this feels kind of like nobody's even gotten close to this in any other franchise that I've seen.
No.
I mean, except for like, certain characters and certain models, but like on a whole, like this many special effects and everything.
Yeah.
Like this is just
so when you were looking
movie
at
making, baby.
Some behind the scenes stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like how many people were acting in a shot? Like a lot? Or like
I didn't do a whole lot of looking.
There's a lot of apes in this movie.
But like
how many in the background are not there when they're shooting?
Well, one shot that I remember because it was just like a B-roll.
Okay.
Was like that scene where Cody Smith McPhee gets like thrown down?
Yes.
Like everybody was in that room.
Everybody?
Like there's
a lot of
all the
apes
mocaps
in that.
and stuff. I mean, at least from my memory, there's like 7 or 8 apes that were around, at least.
I think they're more than that. Maybe I'm wrong.
In that tunnel area.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
And then
that's more
actors,
than I would think.
Yeah, I think, but
I gotta watch it.
I wasn't looking for that detail, so I didn't necessarily notice it. And then
I didn't pay attention next time.
I didn't see any of the like huge group shots, so I don't know how many were in like those.
I'm just curious how many of them are not there.
I bet it's mostly like 7 to 20 people at the most.
Which to me still feels like a lot.
Yeah. That's just my guess.
That's cool.
Yeah. Hit me with them actors.
Have we covered Kerry Russell before? Has she been in a Marvel movie?
She was in Star Wars Episode 9, but I don't know that I'd love to cover her again because I was watching this movie.
Star Wars Episode 9?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She was that one character that I don't remember, but yeah.
Right.
You want to cover her again?
I just would like a little refresher because I'm confused about her career a little bit.
Well, she's an American in the show Americans.
Okay, that was that I was trying to think if she had a show like that.
No one has ever told. I don't know anyone who watches that show.
Uh-huh.
But it's been on for so long.
Is it still on?
No.
Okay.
So I'm wrong. But I guess there was always something about it that's like, this show kind of seems interesting. I wonder if it's good.
Yeah.
But it's also like on primetime TV.
I don't think so. I think it was like Showtime or something.
Are you sure?
I think. Maybe.
FX.
FX.
So it's an FX show.
Yeah.
Cool poster.
Yeah.
But I don't know anyone who watches, so I don't know if it's good.
Yeah.
And it's just TV shows. I don't have the time to just try one.
No.
So until someone tells me it's good,
now we're gonna get like
I'll check it out.
30 people that will text us and be like, "Oh my gosh, The Americans, this is so good." Was that the show they were spoofing on the Simpsons episode we were watching with Homer? Where he got brainwashed. Homeland. That's what that was. Yeah. Because the episode was called Homerland.
But she's in also Felicity, Antlers, which we never watched, but I think we got from the library and never watched.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you need more?
No. That's fine. What do you think about her in this movie?
Yeah, I thought that she had nothing to do and was sleepwalking through it.
I think she was doing the best she could.
Yeah, I'm not saying she did bad or anything, but this is. I was talking about it this morning. I don't think this. I'm not like mad about this at all, but it is technically a criticism.
Yeah,
that there are like no female characters.
Yeah,
actually. Well, no. Because there are no female characters, especially in these two movies, Rise and this one. And I actually will say that it is kind of a shame so far because Zero was such a huge character in several of those movies, and she was like what her character did and her motivations and everything was some of my favorite parts in those movies. So it is actually a bummer that they haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the next one. Because then also Judy Greer's in this.
Yeah, she's Cornelia.
And I was like, that just kind of seems silly to me. Funny enough, as we're like praising all of the mocap, the performances people are giving, but it's like that was such a nothing character. Yeah. Her character only existed for Carrie Russell as a human to do something to help her to get which I know that's the story. I know. And but it is so basically with Carrie Russell, it's just like I didn't care. But on the other hand, I think that you shouldn't like anything that involved humans was my least favorite part, and I think you're supposed to feel that way. Yeah. Because that's how compelling the Apes story needs to be, and it absolutely was. Like, I'm not hung up on her performance or character or anything.
Yeah, me neither. And it's one of those things, as Case and I will talk about, where it's like it's definitely a criticism, but it's also like the story's so well written that like it makes sense. But having more female characters doing more things definitely is a positive thing. Yeah. But for this movie, it just doesn't really bother me in any sort of way.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I'll be
for me personally.
Yeah. So I'll be interested in the next one, and then I'm so sorry. The next one after that, what they do.
But it is interesting that like now that you mention it and bring it up this way, it's like there's not really anything for Cody Smith-McPhee to do either. So,
true, absolutely true. Because I did actually think about that. Yeah, where it's like, he doesn't really do anything either.
It's kind of just Jason Clarke.
It is. He does great.
He does great.
So we've talked about him before on the podcast, I'm sure. Where he is.
Oh yeah, Terminator Genesis.
And I'm sure in that what. Did I say this last time you said he was in that? Okay.
Remember he's John Connor, but he's also the Terminator in that movie.
I don't care. So we have talked about him, and I'm sure, we bashed him in that movie like we bashed everyone else. But he does feel like the most miscasted actor currently working.
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree.
Why are you acting that way? We've talked about that.
We have?
Yeah,
about the miscast specifically?
Yes, I said every time we bring him up, I say he's the most miscast actor currently working.
Oh, I thought you've said other complaints about him.
Well, yeah, but that's because he's always miscast. He's just been he's just had
Well,
such
it felt like
terrible...
a revelation, and that was how great you presented
Okay, well, that's my take on Jason Clarke, okay? He has been in some things where he's great in that we've seen, like Winning Time. He was so flipping good in that show. He was really good. So good. Probably my favorite part.
Well, you know what it might be? Is I think he may be a character actor, but people are trying to make him a leading man.
I think I would agree with that. And I'm actually interested to see where he goes. Well, I guess this is 2014.
Yeah, this is 10 years ago.
Where does he go from here? I could look. But yeah, I think I do agree with that. And he was great in this movie, but it was like he showed up. He did what he was supposed to do. And it's not like in other movies he's doing weird performances necessarily. They're just not right. They're just not right. Yeah. And he just has and I think part of
He was great in Oppenheimer. I think
he was in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, he was one of the guys interviewing him who really started getting.
Sure. See, that's the thing, though. That's the thing about him. Shut it.
I know what it is.
No, I know what it is because I've said this before too. He's very, to me, antagonistic. Look wise.
Yep.
So that's why I think he's often miscast because he's often been casted as like our protagonist, our hero to some degree.
Yeah, and Pet Sematary. Ugh.
I just
terrible movie, but
terrible
not
movie.
Good casting.
Winchester,
either.
Terrible movie, but also just not. He's just not right for it. And I just think not that he always should be casted as the bad guy. Like another like for Winning Time, that's such a layered drama.
Yeah.
And his character was so stressful, stressed out, never happy. And that was just, I just feel like that's the role. That was a great role for him.
What it is, I think, and what's funny is this movie is the exception to the rule because he's gentle and sweet.
He is, and he does a
great job. So he can do it. But I think what you need with Jason Clarke is you need him to play someone who has bottled rage. That's what it is.
I would agree with that.
Because I'm thinking about Oppenheimer and the way he is attacking him in that interview is like, this is like an angry man.
Mm-hmm.
This is not someone that you want to like cut off in traffic. He needs to play someone you don't want to cut off in traffic. That's what Jason Clarke needs.
Yeah.
Except in this movie. And he did a great job.
He did really well in this movie, but
You're
I do think
on the
a lot of that,
anytime.
If you're in this movie casted as a human, like your job is not to overshine anybody else.
Yeah.
Just show up and do your job because it's about the apes.
Yep.
And I think everyone in here understood the assignment.
Yeah.
I thought Gary Oldman was very good.
I thought he was great.
He probably human-wise was my favorite performance, which kind of feels good because I think I've just been getting really tired of Gary Oldman in general.
What about his performance in Oppenheimer?
Who was he in Oppenheimer?
Harry Truman, of course.
Okay.
I just remember when he popped in, I was like, okay.
Let's calm down.
Let's
calm down
far.
with Gary Oldman. He's like, makeup? I can wear makeup? In this movie, one really big strength of this movie is they show you care for both sides.
Yes.
Because they make it very clear that the humans are in dire straits. Not the band, but in reality, they're in dire straits.
That's for you, Sean Muir.
But they have they're not malicious. Of course, it does turn into like it's us or them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what, especially with Koba's character, like it's us or them, and that's where conflict happens. That's why we get war in general.
Yeah.
So I just think they did it so well, and they did it so well in his character because his character brought that.
Yeah.
Especially, but then they did it. They always showed us the humanity of him, which I think is so crucial because when they got power back and they showed him his iPad powered up and he looked at pictures of his family that he probably was so scared he was never going to see again, these pictures.
Yeah.
Then he recalls his life with his family who was dead. And it was so sad.
Yeah, it was
and
great.
And then later on when they're getting ready to fight, they're getting all the guns together. There's that one guy that's nervous and he's being a very like reassuring, like, we'll be great. It'll be great. It'll be great. And they took the time.
Yeah.
For his character to do that to someone else.
Yeah.
And then later on in the movie, when they're rigging up the tower to explode, to blow it up, I'm not mad at him.
No, I get his motivation.
I get it. It's great.
There's no bad guys in this movie.
No, because even with
That's
Koba,
the beauty of it.
Koba, it's like
when he says human work, I'm like,
no, I get it. I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
Kirk Acevedo plays Carver. That's the trigger happy guy.
Oh, okay. What is he in?
The Thin Red Line, Band of Brothers, which I bet is what you.
That's what I was recognizing him from. Yep.
Star Trek Picard, The Offer, Exit Package, Stumptown, a lot of shows.
The Offer.
Nick Thurston plays Blue Eyes, the son.
Yeah.
He is also in FBI Most Wanted.
Uh-oh.
Luck.
He's Most Wanted?
He's in Family Guy, American Dad, Mr. November. He's really got a weird filmography.
Yeah.
Not a lot of great stuff.
I got the impression he was more of a voice actor. Was that right?
I am getting that impression kind of too.
Good for him.
Anyone else?
Maybe hit
Koba. Toby
like
Kebbell.
The best performance.
Oh my gosh. So this guy plays Dr. Doom or Victor Von Doom.
Yes.
And Fantastic Force-tastic. Fan-for-tastic. He's also in Rock and Rolla, Warcraft, For All Mankind, Servant, the M. Night Show,
Oh yeah.
Bloodshot. So he's also got a very strange filmography.
Yeah. This is his performance, man. I
He
mean,
is so good. He's so good.
And you really should, Jordan, like go online and look at him like acting. It's crazy.
Yeah, I should.
It's actually
I'm gonna
crazy.
do that today.
Yeah, and we mentioned Judy Greer. Is there anyone else?
I don't know.
Okay, well then I guess now it's time for this episode of
Let me just say a couple more things I liked about this movie.
Well, we're gonna sum it up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So let's. I'm gonna depart and go on a journey with Case, and then maybe I'll put some harp music right now that'll go or something like that. But it'll probably just be a sample, so it might be kind of techno-y sounding. And then we'll get to me and Case talking about the movie, and then we'll come back from our harp dream, techno harp dream, and techno harp dream, new band name, called it. And then Jordan and I will sum up our thoughts on the movie.
Okay.
Well, maybe we should just jump right in because
I have been loving your coverage of this because this is a franchise that I really enjoy, and like I love that you always approach like movies with a positive outlook going into it, at least.
I try.
Both you and Jordan as a collective. That was the royal you, the plural you.
Yeah.
But more importantly, like this is a franchise that I love, and like as an adventure of just like going through and watching the entire series from start to finish is incredible. Like me looking at this project that you were doing, I'm just like, that is something I can't do as an adult. And I find the journey so incredible, especially since you're not familiar with most of it. You know, like that's what I find so cool. And yeah, now you're in that home stretch. Like the thing is, the Circus trilogy is so good just in general. It makes it difficult. Like I always have to like put these aside when I'm talking about like my favorites of the series, because one, all three of these compete for like favorite of just this trilogy alone.
This counts as listeners. We started. I'm backing up because I got to include all these sweet compliments, and we're already diving into Apes. So Case Aiken is back on the pod, making his triumphant main feed return, talking about a series that he's one of the main reasons why we covered it. So welcome, and then go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so first of all, thank you for allowing me to be on this series for like the most beautiful of movies.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's so wonderful. I'm so happy to be here for this particular one. But honestly, any of this trilogy, I would be so happy to be here for, because I love the quote unquote circus trilogy of the Planet of the Apes movies. Like I think they're all so good. I think that currently Dawn is sitting at my top spot, but honestly, whichever one I watched most recently can like compete for it, because Rise is so good and War is so good. I think I've lived with War the least for, because like I watched these movies a ton in lead up for War, and post-war of the planet, post-war in a post-war America has been like the era of the streaming where like, who has time to watch anything, let alone like rewatch a thing. So it's just like
that hurt my heart hearing that. Well, but, that hit so close to home.
Yeah, exactly. That's the world that we live in. And like some people had like a respite during like the pandemic, but I didn't. So that's just the thing. Speaking of pandemics, let's talk about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Well, yeah. So. You've been following our coverage really closely, and as of now, I would imagine that you have heard our battle episode.
I've heard the battle episode, yeah.
Okay, so then Rise, as of this recording, is not out yet, and we're actually in last week's Rise episode we stated that we're no longer talking about the Burton movies. So when we say all the Planet of the Apes movies rock, it's because we're just pretending that doesn't exist. So we don't have to talk about that.
It's such a side story, and it's tied for last. Like no matter what, it's tied for last.
But
with good makeup, with great makeup.
Great makeup, yes. And we have a fun episode on that people are gonna love and did love, I hope. But so to catch you up, Rise was pretty great.
Yes.
I would say though, for me, the first like hour, I was kind of cautious. I was like, okay, what are we doing here? This is a little different than, the story that they tell in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Am I okay with that, et cetera, et cetera. Once they get to the quote monkey ape sanctuary, then on, I was like, okay, we are cooking with gas. And when he said no, we at our house audibly gasped.
Yes.
That moment was breathtaking. So, and then the Golden Gate Bridge sequence is pretty incredible, especially considering we're talking 2011, and it looks better than most modern day blockbusters. So, and then I'm like, okay, we're covering this Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This whole time I could tell that this was sort of a favorite of people. And I remember even at the time, some intense nerd sides were like, people should start considering like what Andy Serkis does for like Oscar performances, which is maybe a bit extreme. But at the same time, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I get what they're saying. And I loved this movie.
can I share this anecdote? And then I do want to like talk about Rise for a minute, but like, so I watched this movie a lot. And part of this is that this movie was came out and was on DVD during a stretch where like DVDs were still useful to me.
Sure.
Where I was like traveling a lot. Like I was still living in New York, but I was coming down to DC a lot of times. And so at some point I ripped the DVD onto my hard drive because it was just like, yeah, this is a movie that I'll totally want to watch like on a bus ride, because like the bus ride between DC and New York is about 4.5 to 6 hours depending on traffic. Yeah, the 4.5 is more frequent, but the 6 hours is not the longest bus ride I've been on for that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, 5 is a safe bet. Which is enough to like watch a couple movies if you especially if you're doing it a lot. And like I've had stretches where I've been commuting on every weekend or for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was watching it on my laptop, I realized that when I had ripped the DVD, it did not rip the subtitles for this movie. And so I watched this movie, and like the first 20 minutes, there's no words. It is entirely in sign language.
Wow.
And it didn't have any of those subtitles, which was amazing. Watching the body language for all of these mocap performances was so incredible. And Serkis especially. Like, getting to like does he deserve an Oscar? Yeah. Yes, he does. like the performance, if you are watching just for body language, his conversations with Maurice, for example, in this movie, it is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that is such a. I know you'd mentioned that off air, but that is wild. Putting that contextually, like and you would see the performers in a way that we're not clocking because we're checking out the subtitles.
Right,
man, that is crazy.
And like I don't know sign language. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. So like there. It's not. I had seen the movie before, so I knew roughly what they were saying at any given point. But like I don't know sign language, so I was entirely following what they were conveying, both like understanding the basis of the gestures, like the parts that are like fairly self-explanatory, along with just like all of the body language stuff, the eye movement, all the stuff that they're tracking in the mocap suits. Oh man, he's doing a tour de force, and no one goddamn notices it.
Yeah. Well, except for us ape heads, right?
Yeah.
So here's something I gotta ask you, because you're so. Oh, I guess I gotta go back to the beginning. Well, let me ask you this, and then I'm gonna ask you a question.
Sure.
Of Planet of the Apes here. I lost my train of thought. It left the station and immediately crashed. Planet of the Apes fans. Are you plugged into, do you know other people? Do you see like fan groups, etc.? Do you know about the fan base? Much like, Star Wars, you kind of know like, oh, fans hate this movie and then like certain types like this, etc. Do you have that knowledge about Planet of the Apes?
I think that it's more shared but less of the nerdy passion level that Star Wars and Star Trek has for people. For listeners who don't know, I work on Star Trek fan films and know a lot of cosplayers and a lot of like people who are very into like the sci-fi you know the convention community.
Yeah, okay.
No one, I don't know. I might have seen a Planet of the Apes cosplay at some point, but like, I think it's because of specifically the decade where it came out versus like what the fandom and like where like what generation the fandom comes from typically that really invests themselves in those kind of things, and the amount of investment to do a decent portrayal of some of the characters from it, because no one's just going to do like Taylor, for example, like.
Yeah.
It just looks like it could be Tarzan, it could be any, it's just like Savage Man type of thing. So it's not as obvious and like what are they going to do? Marky Mark's character from the Tim Burton ones and like and beyond that, like the costumes, like there have probably been some like notable Comic-Con appearances by it, but like that was like a big prep job kind of thing. There's nothing like there's nothing like the Klingon communities that are out there, like people who like Klingon cosplay, and that's just a thing they do, and learn Klingon in some scenarios and stuff like that. So I think part of that is also like, again, most of that generation is like, it's a lot of Gen X, it's a lot of millennials who are very nostalgic for this all. And there's probably some like later boomers, but like, you just remember that Planet of the Apes is like 1 decade prior to a lot of like the nerd wave that we really saw,
Right. 77 is A New Hope,
Right.
So yeah, okay. Cause I guess I'm getting the impression and the feeling, when I'm researching the movies and stuff like that, it feels to me like, and maybe it's just because the fan base is smaller or less passionate, but there doesn't, unless I'm totally wrong, it just doesn't feel like there's like the toxic element that there is with like Star Wars or something. It seems like, from what I can tell, when Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is almost here, and it seems like Planet of the Apes fans are like, great, a new Planet of the Apes movie, can't wait to go see it and love it. Am I wrong that that's like the attempt?
I think that it's a fandom that is fairly under the radar, and it's so overtly political at every turn. Like there's no one pretending that it's not political. Like you can't look at that first movie and be like, nope, there's no politics whatsoever in that movie. It's also a franchise that has never been lionized the way that like Star Wars or Star Trek, for that matter, have been. In both Star Wars cases with like the original 3 movies and Star Trek with the original 3 seasons, people could like really be like, oh man, this was like such great material. And then, for a while just be like, oh man, all of the stuff that Lucas touched is gold. And then the prequels come out and it's more complicated than that, regardless of your feelings about it. Whereas like Planet of the Apes, the second movie is like a lot of people's least favorite movie in the original franchise. Immediately understand that this is a franchise that has ups and downs, that's trying to say a thing that is impressive when it can be impressive, but it's still kind of camp. No one looks like a real ape in the original movies. They look like this really interesting cosplay of an ape.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that the fandom it's usually a thing that people like in addition to all their other stuff. And I think that it's a fandom that invites people to really think critically about society. And I think the Tim Burton one is the other one that like people usually like put at the bottom, or Battle, but Battle's usually because of the production values.
Right.
And like the Tim Burton one is like, well, it's because it's not saying anything. It says less than the other movies, and that's what disappoints a lot of people.
Right.
So I think that
sounds like you heard our episode.
I may have opined quite a bit about the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie on my own podcast recently.
Right.
So I think it's a franchise that is a little more under the radar. It's no one's like identity the same way, and so it doesn't end up with that kind of toxic element.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Well then, so then I got, see, we're not even getting to done. There's so much in this planet to unpack. So So first of all, I don't think I ever told you this, but like a year ago, I guested on your show.
Right.
Of course, you know that happened. But when I had like heard about the show, Matt Stormageddon had recommended it, and he was like, maybe they'd have you guest, because I was just trying to find some podcasts, and I wasn't familiar with it, and so I listened to Conquest of the Planet of the Apes just to kind of see what your guys' vibe was. And when I heard that episode, I was like, I just assumed that those Planet of the Apes movies were just all bad except for like 2 new good movies. And so you had talked about how, like, you know, it was about like the police brutality and all this stuff that we talk about too in our episode. And so that episode is sneakily also one of the reasons, beyond us loving the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes trailer, that was like the secondary reason as well, where I was like, well, there's people out there, and Case is one of them, that attest that there are good movies past that original first movie. So I got to thank you for that, because I'm just so loving this ride.
I'm so touched with that. that was my biggest goal by doing the Planet of the Apes marathon on our show.
Yeah.
So on Another Pass, we covered the Planet of the Apes movies, but we did it in reverse order, talking about Battle, then Conquest, then Escape, then Beneath, and then the original, as our way of seeing what has to be said about each one in the state of, well, but all the other ones have already come out, and peeling back the layers until we get to the original. And one of my big hopes was just to be like, this franchise, and I'm just gonna say it right now, it's so fucking rad. It's so fucking rad. It's my catchphrase whenever I talk about this franchise, because they're all so goddamn cool. And that's why when we were talking initially about which Planet of the Apes movie I was going to come on for, I was like, well, I just talked about the original 5, and then I talked about Tim Burton's a bit as well, because we did a retrospective on older episodes, and we talked about that one. And then but I never have like a real excuse to talk about the Circus trilogy, because the Circus trilogy is just great across the board. It's fantastic. It competes for first, and the only reason, because you have to kind of do a curve because of, you know, special effects and how writing works, and you know, all the cumulative things about movie making.
Sure, yeah.
It makes it really difficult to compare the original Planet of the Apes with these movies. Without just like feeling like you're going crazy, like you're comparing like things that are too far apart, even though they're the same franchise.
Yeah.
But so I knew I wanted to do one of these 3. And I had talked about War when it first came out, because certain Point of View, the podcast that like splintered off into my shows and then all the like the whole network, that was running when that movie came out, and we did an episode when the movie came out on the movie. So I was like, probably not War, even though I think that War is the best CGI I have ever seen in terms of the apes. Like, if you haven't watched it yet,
it gets better.
The fur gets so good. The texture and everything looks so good. I was blown away in theaters for that one. And it was between Rise and this one, and like that's because these two are both great. I think Rise is so amazing for all of the nerdy shout outs to the world of Planet of the Apes, like to all the things from Planet of the Apes. You know, we get the space shuttle is like lost in the background, like news about that.
Love that they don't like, you know, really point their finger at it. You know, you can miss that if you're not paying attention, and I like that.
Exactly. Like we get the no part. What I really love is that Rise deconstructs the story that Cornelius tells, and puts it in the context of our actual world. And so it presents the terrible state of things that these apes endure from their perception. And from their perspective, you can imagine is then passed down story by story of like, we were slaves. They like used to test cats and dogs, and then they tested it on us instead. And then instead it gets, you know, all jumbled up in the you know, the myth making of it all. That it becomes like, well, you know, instead of being test subjects and all the things that they are, like circus performance and whatnot, it's, you know, wider spread and sort of like, you know, galvanized into sort of this like chattel construct that you know, we ultimately see in Conquest. So you can see how it points at our society currently and really breaks down how like we are just blind to the horrible abuses that we put everyone through, which I think is such a cool element of it all. Like, because like Conquest is so good, and Conquest is doing, you know, effectively the same story as Rise. But Conquest is blunt and Rise is subtle. Like Rise is like, it's the same actual circumstances, which is that these apes are being tortured by virtue of existing in a society where we humans are on top. And that have been made to be our slaves. They have all this human work done to them. And that it's, you know, that from their perspective, it's what we see in Conquest.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
So I love that.
You're making me like Rise more.
I mean, I love Rise a lot, but in terms of like, well, which one did I really need to talk about? I needed to talk about Dawn, because like Rise, you know, it's got the plague, it's got all these things that are like amazing from like a continuity wonk standpoint. Like, and like, believe me, I'm a comic book nerd. Like, I am all here for weird continuity shit, for how that all fits together. But man, Dawn as just this like Shakespearean drama where you see how they almost make it in this new status quo of apes rising up and humans falling. You can see how like peace almost was achieved, and it's so goddamn interesting and so Shakespearean in the relationships between everyone, and just so beautifully shot. Like, man,
it's
considering the fact that Matt Reeves came on last minute for this movie, we are talking about just like one of like there are so many great like YouTubers who have like done like exposés on this one. I was watching one right before we came on, which is Story Street, and like just like the breakdown of like the way shots are composed to have like trees and like dividing apes when they're talking and there's issues. When the first human, the guy who like shoots Ash, first shows up, like up until he enters frame, the two apes are always overlapping each other in frame, and when he shows up, all of a sudden they part, and that's the first time there's like division between the apes.
Wow.
You know, like there's such amazing cinematography going on, in addition to these amazing performances, in addition to, you know, these terrible circumstances pushing everyone into a position of war, in addition to the fact that this is a goddamn movie where we have a chimpanzee riding on horseback dual wielding machine guns. Like, this movie has layers, and some of those layers are just fucking rad, and some of those layers are like how tragic is the relationships that we all have, where there's good people on all sides, and yet at the same time bloodshed is inevitable. Like, holy hell.
Well, it's wild too, and I would imagine you're probably going to be on the same board with me as this, but maybe some of our listeners not. But I watched this and I was like, this movie's, I mean, I really loved the Batman, but the Batman is no Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Just on first viewing, I was like, this thing, if we're giving Matt Reeves all the accolades, it's got to be for Dawn. And Let Me In is very good too. But Dawn is crazy good. And I just liked it so much more than Batman, which I loved. I'm not an anti-Batman.
I mean, like, I also have been very vocal about loving the Batman. I think that it is a remarkably grimdark version of 60s Batman with like mooks and everything. It's everything I want in a Batman movie. So like, I don't want to like be like, I don't need to like compare like gems, but yeah, Dawn is the one where like you can put the movie on silent and like get a ton out of it, and you're like, oh wow, okay, cool. Yeah, Dawn is just incredible. So we should note that while like we started texting
this
last
was
night,
unbelievable.
It was incredible.
This actually blew my mind.
So we watched the opening sequence, and I texted you being like, so we're obviously going to talk about the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, let me pull it up, because this is worth pointing out, because this is I've never experienced something like this from this far away.
We were synced.
Yeah, so Case says, so how much time do you think we'll spend talking about the pandemic? And I said, wow, we literally just started it. And yeah. And he says, ditto. I said, wow, crazy. And then you said, just the opening credits. And I said, just got to the title, LOL. I think we're synced up. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like, what?
And then I was messaging you at times because then you like took a pee break at some point, and so I was like a minute ahead. And, like, I was like trying not to like spoil amazing scenes, but at the same time, like this is so good.
Yeah, I think we took a couple of breaks to do a couple of things, and then because then it was way after you weren't even active on Facebook, and I just sent a big long wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is crazy. So, I mean, we're just talking about it. We can free flow. We could do whatever. But should we talk about the pandemic?
We should talk about the pandemic, mainly because, like, wow, like even the opening credits are incredible in this movie. And specifically, so it opens with just a red dot, and it shows the spread of the plague everywhere. And they intercut it with real footage of like Bloomberg talking about like stay inside if you're sick, like addressing New York. Like they have like footage of Obama at one point. Like all of the pandemic stuff that they're showing off on it all before the riots start, and honestly even with the riots, like sort of matches up with like 2020. Oh my god, like it was kind of I think sometimes the word triggering is a little overused, but it was kind of like, whoa, okay, yeah, this is how it went down. Yeah,
for like pretty much we just didn't have the bad. I mean, a lot of people had a bad ending, but I mean, as a whole, we weren't overtaken by apes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like it's the difference in degree where it's like, well, one was doing a 9/11 a day, but that's relatively small in terms of the actual populations, versus like in the movie version of this, it was, only a few thousand survivors type situation.
Yeah. So that was pretty wild, but it was nice because I think I'm in a zone where I'm a little. I guess it's hard to reckon with like filmmakers like using the pandemic or not using it. Like sometimes it just gets confusing in works, and it can be something as simple as like, hey, like when did this story take place? It can get all sorts of confusing. But having something just basically saying what was going to happen is just pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only word I have for it.
It's kind of like how at the actual start of the pandemic, we were all tuning into like pandemic dramas because it was shocking at how many of them were like pretty spot on. And I think part of that speaks to these are cyclical. We all just have to batten down quarantine appropriately, and like we'll get through it. Like some of Shakespeare's best works were during a pandemic. Calculus was created during a pandemic. Like we go through these cycles. So there's history just to point to. There's also like very obvious current systems in place that make it particularly bad if you're trying to hold that in. One of which is flying.
Right.
One thing I like about Rise that we didn't mention, I don't think a lot of people really talk about this, is that humanity does destroy itself and also creates the apes in the same moment. It's not the ape plague, like the actual patient zero that spreads the whole thing. It's entirely accidental exposure to a human that then spreads it to another human that then gets on a plane and then spreads it all over the planet.
Right. Yeah.
It is, in fact, you destroyed us all kind of situation. God damn you. It's just not nuclear, and there's, there's still like some headcanon required to make the Circus trilogy fit in with the others. I like to think of it as the original timeline that then finds its way into being the Planet of the Apes timeline, and then we have the Cornelius and Zero go back in time and then jumpstart the timeline that way, which makes
that's kind of what I was thinking about it too, because also Battle ends to me in a way that seems like the future has changed. I don't know what you thought about the end of Battle, but
I think that it is allowed to be ambiguous, but I think that ultimately the tiers and the sequence in general speaks to the timeline being broken. like I think that these movies work so well as like an original timeline because this also introduces the virus, which means that when Cornelius and Zira come back in time, they infect the apes around them, and that's why they're smart enough to be slaves by conquest and smart enough to be
Oh,
fully
yeah.
sapient by the time we get to battle.
Oh, that's so smart. That's so cool.
I have no idea if anyone actually making the movies has ever thought that, but I think the headcanon works really well. To have these be the prequel movies to the real timeline, then you have everything get reset by them going back in time, and that's why we get to those events so much faster and so much more dramatically. But the
Oh, that's so good, Case.
the patterns have to emulate themselves.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. The series just keeps getting better and better. Now, and I know we need to talk about Dawn, but
Yeah. We got to the opening credits.
I know. So far, Rise and Dawn, at least from my first time watching, didn't seem to have much like religion aspects to them. And I don't know if War does, but
yeah. Sorry, sorry to spoil that. Yes, they will be involved.
Okay. Well, that's cool because I was sort of thinking like what would be cool is if it didn't. If War didn't, is if Kingdom was the series that kind of started the mythologizing, and having reckoning with mythologies and the past and stuff. That would be kind of cool if that's what that movie was, pushing toward.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it kind of looks like maybe it is in the trailers. I'm not sure though.
I think so. It seems to be like a rise of demagogues who are each like putting forth their own like ideologies to sort of like shape the ape communities. At least that's like what I took from the trailers.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, like these movies are so nascent in it all. Like you can see the rise of like the lawgiver kind of like archetype with Maurice in this movie. So like you can see how these are extrapolated into sort of the mythology that we would have in the original Planet of the Apes movies. But I think it gets more extreme in the next one, and I really am looking forward to hearing your response to War for a few things. But it's still early.
Wait.
It's still early phase for all of this. Like it is deliberately like we are going to build to the things that we know about like what the apes, like how their religion and how they structure everything. But it's going to be by way of like these small nuggets that you can see how they would like roll and accumulate and, Katamari like into like some sort of like crazy, massive, ball that like consumes everything. That's how you get to Dr. Zaius.
Very, very cool. Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hit some more of what we like about this movie though, without just gabbing all day long about the whole trilogy.
So I talked about how I really love the fact that they had the courage to do the opening 20 minutes without any actual spoken words.
Yeah. The close-up shot of Caesar too, Jordan and I immediately were just like, okay, like we are in it, let's go.
Oh yeah. Like and like with the immediately they've got like the face paint on to indicate that they've like started to build like kind of a culture around the whole like practice. We the way that they introduce like Blue Eyes and like the hunting style and the fact that we like link up Ceasar and Koba together so strongly in this scene is so good. I find the hunt really interesting. I find the fight with the bear really cool looking.
Yeah.
I texted this part to you last night, but so the one thing I find disappointing about this movie, and it's not that it's universally without, but this movie is very heavy chimpanzee. And I find it annoying because the end of Rise is so good at having like the different types of apes doing different types of things in their military strategy. And it was such a cool, it's like, it really like scratches that like puzzle solving itch that I have. Like, I want this to be an RTS and we've got like, we've got our swinging units and we've got, like our heavies and like, our tier 3 melees, if this is Warcraft 3 kind of thing. And I miss that because it would have been interesting to see like, all right, well, what are gorillas doing during these like hunts? Like what are orangutans doing during this all? I really thought that like Koba should have had like an orangutan in their like stealth crew because like having something that's like super, super arboreal that's able to like fully just like exist in a space above, like high above everyone, would have been a really useful kind of tool to have in your armada. And likewise, like while they set up the guerrillas as the guards in this community, it we're not doing anything to sort of set up them as like the enforcers in this community. And that's like the one thing that's like, well, like I don't know, because it's uncomfortable. It's more uncomfortable in a society that is apes building themselves, for the guerrillas to get forced into the sort of the labor class. Like it makes more sense when it's humans doing it to the guerrillas. So like I don't know necessarily where I fall on that one, but gorillas are also just like a lot bigger.
Right.
There are things that they could just do that like the whole strategy of like let's flip open a bus and like shove it down the entire length of the Golden Gate Bridge to absorb all the bullets. Like the chimps aren't doing that one. That's the gorilla plan.
Yeah.
But
that's an interesting point. Yeah,
and it's like minor. Like again, like for one thing, we do see some random ones throughout. But it's just it's like so like chimpanzees and bonobos are like their go-to for like, well, mass wise they're pretty similar to humans. Like it's pretty easy to represent them on screen without like too much work. And like the most important players are Ceasar is a chimpanzee. Koba is a bonobo. Like the majority of the major players are chimpanzee or bonobo, which is sometimes called pygmy chimpanzee. They're super closely related. They are equally related to humans. Like that whole thing. Like that group is the most important in terms of the politics of this piece. But at the same time, it is like just kind of a bummer that like in the big CGI set pieces, we don't see more of that, because like how cool would it be for a gorilla holding like some sort of like minigun that is like not designed to be like wielded, or like a rocket launcher that's supposed to be like attached to a tank, like,
right,
like
that's true.
They've got some moments in there, but like for the most part they're the support crew as opposed to the actual like active participants. Anyway, so the hunt itself is really cool, and I love that we set up, for one thing, we add the visual markers of the bear scratches to Blue Eyes, which is really helpful in distinguishing him from everyone else. We get the Koba rushing to save Ceasar and how that all plays out. We get the dynamic between Koba and Ceasar in relation to Blue Eyes, which is so important for this whole movie. And we get the whole thing about like Ceasar trying to be like the effective dad and Koba's trying to be the cool uncle, being like scars make you look tough. Like
well, this was frustrating, but good on Jordan. Right when Koba came in, I was like, oh cool, Koba's in this one too. I didn't know. And then she's like, oh, he's gonna betray him in this movie. And I was like, what? But they're friends. And she's like, he looks too evil. He's got to betray him in this movie. And they're showing him be such good buds at the beginning. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Dang it. I love Koba.
It is a little annoying that like they go with the ugly is evil trope in this movie.
Right.
Especially because it's so well earned. The whole human work speech in quotes. He just keeps saying, he keeps pointing to scars and saying human work. But like, it's so good at conveying the dynamic that, or like the emotions that Koba is feeling in this movie. But it is playing into that trope of like, the one who's like all, marked up and everything is going to be the one who like ultimately is the bad guy. And like, that's a bummer.
At the same time, like, story wise, it just makes sense. It's like, it's just there. And so it was, when Jordan said that, I'm kind of like, I'm like mad because she's right. And it's like, I should have picked up on that. I've seen enough movies to know, but I think I'm just so swept away by these apes.
Yeah. I mean, so after the hunt, we get to see like the ape city, which is in like the redwood forest outside of San Francisco. And goddamn, it's such a breath of fresh air not to do like, just here's more desert, like wasteland kind of ape city.
Yeah.
Like this one feels like the ape city that makes sense for the location that they're at. They're in this like forest outside, this northwest forest, which is probably pretty cold. Like I am surprised that they're not wearing like furs and stuff in this movie. Just from apes aren't like they live in Africa. Like the chimpanzees and gorillas, and like the orangutans also live in the rainforest. So like I'm surprised that they don't have anything to like add additional like layers for them.
But San Francisco's not that cold to an animal.
It's not they're going to die, but it is going to be they're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's true.
and it would help just in terms of like adding some degree of like sophistication to them, because they do have like the doctors wear like face masks to like try to like prevent like, any kind
that
of
was
disease.
cool.
I like that, like making the most of what they're able to do in terms of like, here's the essentials that we have to like put on, kind of stuff. I thought the city was so cool. I love Maurice teaching the kids.
Yes, I love that. And ape not kill ape.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's like battle. I like watching these so close. I'm like picking up all the little Easter eggs and references, Yeah. And of course that comes into play in this movie very intensely later. But yeah, the whole Ape City, everything they set up here, it's just a feast for the eyes. And like you said, they're not even speaking.
Right.
In like English or like a spoken language. It's just sign language.
Right.
Incredible.
There's so much body language in these whole sequences. Like they set up. It is a little bit of a bummer that Caesar's wife is not like a major player in this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Or at least like an active participant. She's like sick for most of it, which is like kind of like I said, it's kind of over. It makes sense. Like, I did want to like talk to you and Jordan about like the parenting scenes, like there's a live birth like on this movie.
Yeah.
And one thing that we all have just recently been through in the past year is we all just became parents.
Yeah. Well, what was funny is the only thing I thought in that scene was I was like, did not go down that calmly in our birth room. It was much more dramatic than a couple of sighs, and then the baby was there.
Yeah. Like I imagine it would be a lot to have like the ape doctor signing like the tube is around its neck, the tube's around its neck, and like
Yeah.
Oy.
Oh my gosh. But no, yeah, it's not like I necessarily latched on to anything in particular as far as the parenting in the movie, but it's just strange, as I'm sure you feel as well. Like there's just a deeper understanding for these scenes than I had just a year ago, So there's just scenes where you just kind of go like, oh, I understand that emotion in a way I've never understood it before.
Yeah.
That these characters are portraying. So that's more like how I experience the parenting. I don't know about you though. What did you?
I honestly, the thing that got me the most is later in the movie when they are at Caesar's home, like when they're at the house he grew up in, and his son shows up.
Oh my
and,
goodness,
like,
yeah.
The thing that really got me was the feeling that I could not have anticipated. Like they talk all the time about becoming a parent, and they talk all the time about being a child of someone, but like the experience of being both like nostalgic for your childhood while at the same time being a parent is a feeling that is just like it requires you to be buying in on two sides in a way that you can't do it until you're really there. Like the relationship I have fathering my daughter when my parents are around, like kind of thing.
I wasn't even picking up on that, but now that you mention it, it's like, oh yeah, that's just a constant feeling, and they definitely did tap into it in that sequence.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
I mean, again, this movie's good. So good. This movie's so good. So we get Blue Eyes, who is like recovering from his like bear ashes, playing with Ash, who is the son of Rocket, who is he was like the alpha male type.
I know. I love that he is with him the whole ride.
Yeah, I know. He's ride or die for Caesar now.
Yeah, he just needed to be like out alpha'd, and then now he is like, nope, you're my guy.
Yeah, I love that continuity there. Like, Rocket is a character that I pay attention to throughout like the whole trilogy. And it's fun following that relationship. One thing I find annoying in the same section though is they just insert a new gorilla to replace Buck, and they like just like act like he's been there the whole time. And to be fair, he's been with them for years. But like they never like really like address him as a new character. And it's just like,
so this I didn't even clock it. This is not the same gorilla.
No, because that gorilla got gunned down when he like took that when he beat up a helicopter.
Yes. Yes, of course. How could I forget?
Right.
Yeah, I in my head just like forgot that scene. And I was like, oh yeah, the gorilla from the first movie.
Exactly. It's so frustrating when you actually think about it. It's the one thing. And it's not that it's the end of the world. Again, it's a gorilla who's been like a trusted member of their community for years at this point.
Yeah.
But they never actually say his name.
Right.
Like it's just, here's our gorilla. It's just like, oh, Buck's gone. Who's the new gorilla that like fills in for the spot? And that's a bummer.
Yeah.
They do kind of address it in the next movie. But it's just like, anyway. So,
well, and we also, we get back in touch with Maurice, and I just gotta point out, like we said in the last episode, I'm convinced that Maurice, even though I know that there's an actress that plays Maurice, I'm convinced that Maurice is a real orangutan, and they have him on set, and he actually does the stuff. Because I'm telling you, in both movies, even more so in this, I actually could not tell that he was fake at all.
Maurice is definitely the best
it's unbelievable.
of them. And I think some of that has to do with the Uncanny Valley, which is Maurice looks a little bit more abstract from a human form than the chimpanzees do.
Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Like I would honestly find like also some of it just being a matting issue. Like I noticed this in scenes where the apes are interacting with humans, because it's less obvious when the apes are just with each other. But when the apes are interacting with humans, there are points where the matting of the fur, like the way that like it's like you can tell that it's like a special effect being like superimposed.
Yeah, yeah.
That exists more so with the chimps than I at any point noticed with Maurice. Like I never clock any of that with Maurice. So
yeah, it's unbelievable, and I just want to be hugged by Maurice. Is that so much to ask?
No, because Maurice is a gentle soul and an artist, and like it is. I love, like, I mean, Maurice is the intelligent one, like in a way that you don't get in Conquest, where you're like, well, why are the orangutans the top dogs by the time we get to the future timeline? Maurice sells it so hard. Like when all the apes are arguing about like when they discover humans are around, and Maurice is like, we don't know how many there are or how many guns they have. Like we need to like find that out first. Like, and everyone else is like, oh yeah, Maurice Maurice is right. Yep. Okay, cool.
Right. Well, and like speaking to that, I mean, just having this first moment with him and Ceasar, I found very impactful, where he says, do you think about the humans? And Caesar's going, a little bit, and he says, we haven't seen them in 2 winters. I'm pretty sure they're all gone. And you're just like, what am I watching, like the best movie ever made at this point?
Yeah, their conversation between the two of them is so good. Aside from they being like, they must be dead, and because you know, like for one thing, like every trailer would indicate that there's a human in this movie, but also it's the Planet of the Apes, like you know,
right. So that is unbelievable. Then the humans, there's like a group of humans that walk in, and there's a couple of chimps that are out patrolling, and they get freaked out, and he shoots the chimp.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it's like this is what like the movie is. A lot of movies try to do this, and I don't think a lot of them are successful in the way that this movie is. Because you truly understand both sides of the coin. In like every single battle, every single argument, this movie is not, to me, doesn't really have a bad guy.
Right. Even Koba, who is arguably the villain of the piece, every single thing Koba thinks is vindicated or
absolutely,
or at least justified.
And even Gary Oldman, who's, a little, like, he's like maybe what you can consider the bad guy. All of his motivation and stuff, I absolutely get it. Like, I could not say that I would be like Jason Clarke if I was in this movie. I might be more like Gary Oldman, because there's animals that are now intelligent attacking us. Or seemingly
not only that,
attacking.
the ones who, like, I mean, to bring up the pandemic again, like, think about the amount of anti-Asian hate that was going on during the time, let alone like the conversation about bats or anything like that. Like imagine if that was all rolled into an animal that all of a sudden is preventing your community from getting hydroelectric power.
I mean, yeah, you just brought it home.
Yeah, I mean, like his distrust and distaste for, like, he loses his entire family, and like everyone is blaming the apes, even though again the apes actually had nothing to do with it. It's just like coincidentally called that, and like they happen to become smart in the
Right.
same process. But like it's not. Like literally, the apes didn't give it to everyone. Like they didn't even pass it on. As far as we can
Right.
tell, it didn't pass on to anyone through like their incident in San Francisco. It happened because a human got it and was like sneezing in everyone's faces, and then got on a plane because Rise of the Planet of the Apes is also a prequel to 12 Monkeys.
Oh man, yeah. So it's own little shared movie universe.
God, can you imagine if in the background of like he like the last scene of Rise, he's going and like in the background you see Bruce Willis like shoot himself. Like,
oh my gosh. So yeah, the all of this, I mean, it's just incredible. The Ceasar confronts the group and he yells out "Go!" and that's the first time he speaks. And again, Jordan and I were.
I do find it a little annoying
breathtaking
that
away.
it was a rhyme with no. Like I wish he had said a little bit more, just to and they're all saying "go," and like if he says "go" first and then he like says like something else, like that's the one spot there where I'm like, and. The fact that I have
for
nitpicks,
me, I kind of liked it. I kind of liked that.
The fact that these are nitpicks and like that these are my nitpicks indicates how good this movie is. Like,
yeah,
it is only in the like, man, this movie's so close to being like goddamn perfect. Like,
yeah. But then the apes follow the humans to their colony. We're introduced to the human colony, and they're basically like, "This is our turf. That's your turf. You either stay there or there'll be war." Make it pretty clear, right?
Right. And it should be noted that like the decision to like show up in this like show of force is very much like Ceasar walking this razor edge of like trying to keep the peace, knowing that like violence is a very possible situation, and that like his apes don't have guns at this point. Like they've got bows, they've got spears, but they do not have the kind of firepower that even a modestly armored human settlement is going to have. And so like he's got people like Koba really pushing for violence, and he's got Rocket being like, he shot my son, like pushing for for a kind of violence, even if it's a more measured response and a more personal response. Like Koba hates humans. Rocket is pissed off at that one guy.
Right.
And like not all the apes have a bad experience with humans. Like remember, like Ceasar of all of these apes has the best relationship with humans. All of these apes either are zoo animals or lab experiment animals or circus freaks or things, from the ape penitentiary that we see. Like all of them have had terrible existences, and presumably his upper council are going to be the ones that were in the ape penitentiary with him. Like, and so they all are by definition going to have like very bad expectations of humans and like what the human capacity for violence is. Like, god damn, Draco Malfoy is what they think of when they think of a human.
Right. And you never want to do that.
No.
You can't go straight to Draco Malfoy.
No, absolutely not. And as a result, like Ceasar knowing, like hearing all of them being like, either they're afraid to engage the humans or they are afraid to let the humans live, and being like, we need to show force, but at the same time we are not getting into a land war here because this is a bad call.
Right.
This is a terrible call. We just need to get them the fuck away and let us alone the way that it had been in the first place when we had the whole Golden Gate Bridge escape, because like Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, and so then what's going to ensue for the next, portion of the movie is kind of this back and forth with Jason Clarke and his team trying to negotiate to get the lights running in the city. And they're going to run out of oil, in 2 weeks, but 3 if they stretch it. And then it's the humans kind of like, okay, we'll give you time to work on that, but we got to kill these guys before they kill us. And then it's just written so well because you're sitting there, and like I said, you're applying it maybe to modern day wars or current or past, future, whatever, and you're like, you do see the complicated nature of like it just gets complicated at a certain point, and it's so hard to parse out. Like a lot of times there is a right and a wrong when you can be objective and you're not involved in it, but when you're involved in it, it's so richly written. I don't know how to really express it in a smart way. It's just rich.
It's so clever to have as many clocks as it puts in these scenes to make all the scenes like have like the utmost amount of drama. The 3-week countdown on the fuel is a huge one because and like 3 weeks is if they stretch it, 2 weeks is if they don't, and like realistically, it's like all right, we go a week at most if we're gonna have enough fuel to like go to war. And so there's that. There's the whole like you've got 3 days. That's the only if that doesn't happen because that's the indication. Like we're willing to wait a business week, like to go through our resources. Again, tiny nitpick. Like, why is the hydroelectric dam that is in like a line of sight of their compound? Why is that only just now being discovered as a solution? Not the end of the world. Maybe
it's a movie.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. So like there's that
movie nitpick.
We have the extra drama of like we know what Koba feels about the humans, and we know there's that. And that Koba doing the scouting is really dangerous because Koba is going to find the worst in humanity and report it back. Meanwhile, the cautious Dreyfus character, like Gary Oldman's character, is like, well, let's at least like make sure we've got all the guns and that they're working. And Koba's like, fuck, they have a shitload of guns. Like
this scene where Koba is spying on the humans was so tense, and they're again, Jordan and I are sitting there and we're just like, this movie is this movie has no business being this good, and most of these movies in this series are good,
right?
Like it's insane because he goes there, he sees what's going on, he gets caught, and then he's so worried and nervous, and they have a gun pulled on him, and then he pretends that he's like a silly little ape so that he can get away. And the beats that I'm forgetting the actor's name, but I'm sure we talked about him at the beginning of this episode. The beats that Koba goes through from going from like, I hate these people to I'm going to blow a raspberry and dance around like I'm a circus monkey and make them cute and laugh. It's like, so it's actually kind of terrifying, especially the next time he does it. It is actually like appalling. We were shocked by that scene.
Yeah, like it's Koba plays the jester so well, and it reminds you of again the human perceptions of like what are apes? I mean, like we've been with these apes now for a movie, and at this point, like a quarter, and we see them as sentient viewpoint characters. But the humans are like, oh well, it's just a dumb ape, even though they all know they can fucking talk. That they can roll up on horseback with like spears and stuff. The default is just to have this like not exactly ethnocentrism but like speciescentrism that like regardless of how much of a front that they can put on, they're just aping it. They're not actually dangerous. They're just the whatever. And it's funny how disarming that sort of play can be because like I think that modern society doesn't have like jesters in the same way. Like we have comics that are sort of like pratfall kind of comics to a certain degree, but usually like the jackasses kind of thing, but there's still a degree of like celebrity involved in a lot of that. And the shows have like a little bit of arm's length as opposed to like, here's your buffoon, like right here to like amuse you in your presence. But it does disarm you incredibly when it actually is like put forth directly in front of you.
Yeah. Well, and I know this is jumping out of order, but later in the movie, when Koba is starting his grand plan, he goes, sees those same guys, he fakes, and he starts drinking alcohol with them, and he like spits it on them. And all this, I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm telling you, this was like I was watching a horror movie. It was so tense. And then the facial change and posture change from Koba joking around to jokingly grabbing like the AK-47 or whatever, and then just going stone cold killer and shooting them both like in a split second. It's unbelievable. I mean, this is movie making, baby. I mean, this is good stuff.
Performances. And like, you know, we have to talk about every ape movie for like the performances behind the ape suits. And in this case, behind the mocap. But like, they are such strong performances. And they're different kinds of performances. You know, like the best performances of the original ape movies were these performances that were able to like pierce the costumes, like the, you know, like all this layers that was like holding back their facial tics and everything. This is a movie that like really just like gets every minute subtle thing down so well. It's incredible.
Well, and this is like you watch this movie and you go, okay, even if you're an anti-CG person, you go, I understand why you do that. Because like this performance alone, these two scenes we just spoke of, would absolutely not translate, even in like the Tim Burton amazing makeup. It just wouldn't. It would not translate in the same way.
No, like the transformation for a face as scarred as Koba's to like have that like subtlety and nuance is just not a thing you could do with makeup.
No. Yeah, so another thing, speaking of special effects, it's just every time it rains in this movie, I'm like, at this point, Weta Digital is just flexing that they're having it rain in this movie.
Apparently, a lot of that was on set effects that they were doing. Like they wanted to get as much legitimate rain like in sequence.
Crazy.
Either from actual raining or more likely from like hoses, but like they wanted those effects because, you know, from this point on, like humans are involved in most scenes. So, you know, like, you know, we get the whole thing with what's his face, like coming up and like, you know, making his offer to like you know, submit you know, begging for like, please let us like try to get the lights back on. And, you know, we get this incredible sequence where first off, he is confronted by gorillas. And like, if we want to establish just how terrifying they are, they like drag him through, and like we get you know, we have chimpanzees overhead like cursing him out in you know just by like screaming at him. It's so terrifying, and every time he tries to stand up, he's like knocked down. And like, I don't want to think about how hard a gorilla casually hitting a person to stay down is, but it's probably harder than you've ever been hit. And it's not the hardest they could hit you, just harder than you've ever been hit.
For the listeners, Case is squinting hard and looking off in the distance like, I am going to ponder this for quite some time.
What does my spine feel like when that happens? Oh, not good. Not good.
Broken, in fact.
So, you know, so he has to supplicate to Ceasar and like, you know, convince him. And, you know, we get Koba like really vocalizing at this point. You know, it's the first time that like Koba's like really like speaking out. And it like Koba talks to sort of like remind, like, I feel like at the start of this movie, no one wants to speak if they don't have to, because like it feels like purer to them. And like the ones who speak more are the ones who become more human in some regards. Like Ceasar speaks a lot more. Like it invites the sort of moral gray area, like the non-family kind of conflicts, as they speak more. Like as Koba talks more, Koba becomes more villainous.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, you're very right. But around this time is when Ceasar tells him, like, you know, we don't need to worry about the battle. Don't worry about the guns. We just got to let the humans do human work. And then Koba goes, human work? And points to a scar. Human work? Points to another scar. And once again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but I'm going, this movie's so good. Yeah. Like, this movie is unbelievable. Where was I in 2014 that I was not watching this?
I don't know, because like, Jesus Christ, like I was evangelizing this movie at the time.
Well, I think I was still in my anti-CG phase, you know. So I was, you know, sitting there watching Interstellar being like, this is how you do CG. Mostly practical stuff, you know, and getting all mad, but also watching Gone Girl and not, you know, being upset at David Fincher for using like 100% CGI in every shot of all of his movies.
It's it's
CGI rocks if you use it well.
If you use it well, and if you are getting a true performance out of it, and I think this is an area where you're really getting a good performance out of it. So because Koba is doing a fantastic job. Like we've alluded to this scene a bunch of times because it's so compelling for setting up why Koba has these feelings, and we saw it. We saw how Koba was living. In Rise, like where it's funny. So Koba is a bonobo, and like it's difficult to tell in the crowd shots like what the ratio of chimpanzees to bonobos are. Because they look so similar to begin with. Like it took a long time for them to be like identified as separate species, because they are so similar and like are genetically close enough that they can interbreed. I think it's like a mule situation though, but like but they're really closely related to each other. But they are separate. But the key thing that's interesting about bonobos versus chimpanzees is actually behavioral as opposed to physiological. Again, they're roughly similar size. They're called the pygmy chimpanzee, but they're actually like pretty closely to about the same size. There's a little less sexual dimorphism in there, and that is because bonobos live this very egalitarian matriarchal society. As opposed to the patriarchal one that like you see with chimpanzees. And bonobos are notable for being basically a society of beta males who are all into having just giant orgies all the time. Just orgies all the time. They find food, orgy. They get away from a predator, orgy. Someone's like feeling not that great, orgy. Like they use and like it's a scenario where like in this matriarchal society, like the females use sex as a way of releasing tension between the males when they get aggressive, and also to control them, to like prevent them from like acting out in ways that are aggressive to the rest of the community. So it's fascinating that the one who is so scarred and is so left with all this like pain and so forth is from the famously peaceful version of the ape community. Like more so than any other ape, bonobos are the peaceful ones. Because why wouldn't they when like, hey guys, let's have another orgy. Cool.
Wow, that's really interesting. You're learning science on this podcast too, listener. So
I'm a nut for apes in general.
Another reason why people should, join our Patreon, because we're teaching you not only about movies, but about science on this podcast. So go there and listen to our episode on T2 train spotting with Case. No, T1. And then listen to T2 without Case. And then listen to Blade Runner, which came out this May. So, a lot to listen to. Have you watched T2 yet?
Not yet. I know.
Okay. I really think you should. I had only seen it the once in the theater, and then we watched it for the podcast, and I was like, man, this movie holds up. It is such an interesting reflection on nostalgia and childhood. It's very complex and deep. I think you will like it.
I think, it's been on my like short list ever since we were first talking about the train spotting episodes period. And I just need to do it.
So
but
good.
Again, it's so hard to watch a movie that I know for a fact my wife isn't going to want to watch if it's not for a thing. And like for a thing can't be like my own enjoyment.
Right.
That's not how the world works anymore.
Whenever I have a show because Jordan and I sync up on just about everything media wise, but when there's a show like I want to watch, like for example, I'm watching Shogun, but she's not really watching it. And so, I think the show's over and I've watched 3 episodes. And it's just hard for me to find the time and to set it aside to watch a show that she doesn't want to watch. Which is okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
These are just things you never knew about marriage. And now you
Especially
do.
marriage with children.
Yeah. That's really the key.
Yeah.
But back to this movie, which rocks. Again, as I'm going to keep saying.
And I'm going to keep echoing. When you're like, does this movie rock? Rock! Dun, 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 dun. Does this movie rock? Rock! Yeah.
But yeah, so the humans are working on the water, this power thing. And
hydroelectric power from the
yes,
dam.
Yes, thank you. The scientist expert comes back. And here's something I think I just missed, but they're kind of in this tunnel, a la The Great Escape is what I was thinking of. And then he just runs out of line and he goes, all right, 3, 2, 1, and they blow it, which causes a collapse in this tunnel. Why did he blow it while he was still in the tunnel?
I'm surprised that they blew it when so many people were in the tunnel, but my understanding was that was as far away from the source of the dynamite that they could get because of that they ran out of line, is what they said.
It's just weird because he wasn't pulling the detonator or anything, so I was like, what is going on?
It's a movie is sort of the answer on this one.
Okay. I just wondered if I missed like a line or something. That was how strange it felt.
I mean, the net effect here is that we wanted to have a moment where the apes save the humans to show that they're working together as a team and like things are happening, yada, yada, yada. We also totally skipped over the fact that the reason they're allowed to use or like to work on the dam is that Kerry Russell's character is like a doctor and like saves like Caesar's wife, who's like not doing well postpartum. That's just the thing that happens. It is fair to say that there are some tropey stuff in this movie. Like, when I say this movie is Shakespearean, I mean, like, you know, with warts and all, frankly, in terms of like the nature of like this like conflict between them all. Man, like I had an epiphany last night, and this is not a deep epiphany when you hear what I'm about to say, but when I say Shakespearean, like I was like, oh, it is actually rather like Julius Caesar, like between Brutus and Caesar and like their conflict.
It's funny that you say that because when we were watching the movie, I said, this is kind of Shakespearean. I'm not kidding you. And I couldn't remember which one, but I was thinking like, I was like, oh, we saw that one play that one time. And then I was like, I think it was Julius Caesar. I couldn't remember the details of the play, but I was like, this one's kind of like that. And then I also was watching some behind the scenes like special effects stuff, and one of the guy who was describing what Andy Serkis was doing was like, Serkis is giving an almost Shakespearean performance in this movie. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not nuts. This is right there.
It's wild that this is a movie about talking apes.
I know.
That they are the ones who are doing these like intense, dramatic performances. But that said, it's apt, and it's you know not shocking that Caesar is going to be like Caesar to a certain degree, and obviously there's like massive differences in the story. This is not an adaptation of Julius Caesar in any way. It's just interesting like how they kind of play some of those sort of like themes in the same way. You know, like the et tu Brute kind of moment there when he gets shot later on. Like it's there. It's there. You know?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yeah. What does this movie do, Case?
It fucking rocks.
So after they get the humans out of the tunnel and all that jazz, they're sitting around there. Little baby Caesar is running around. Does he have a name?
He might be Cornelius, but I would have to check.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This movie likes those kind of references, but...
Oh, I guess in battle they did name him Cornelius, too. So all of that is happening, and they have given up their guns, the humans, to work on this project. And... Yeah,
it is Cornelius. I'm not sure if they actually name him in this movie.
Okay, I didn't catch it. But, you know, I've missed things before.
Yeah, this movie likes references. Like, this franchise really likes making those kind of allusions.
Yeah.
Illusions, Michael. Illusions.
Yeah. I say that all the time around the house. Basically, one of the guy who shot the chimpanzee at the beginning of the movie, he has a hidden gun, and little Cornelius is rummaging in his sack, sees it, and is going to play with it. You know, he's a baby. He doesn't know. And then the human grabs it, and there's kind of a struggle that ensues, which, of course, Caesar gets incredibly upset. And now it's like, you know, we don't trust him anymore, and this is bad. Oh, and then that's when the nurse situation
they
happens.
had the one rule, which was no guns.
Yeah. And again, this is this is all complicated territory. Like, it all makes sense. And then I think Koba and Caesar get into a tussle, And then they're like, ape, no, kill ape.
Yeah,
and they
so
make up.
after they have the falling out, and then they agree to like let humans work, but with apes helping to speed it up because they only get 1 day. Because again, there's like clocks on clocks on clocks in this movie. So humans only get 1 day with ape help. Koba comes back, finds the apes helping the humans, and Koba just came back from like seeing the human stockpiles of weapons. So Koba is convinced that the humans are preparing for war, and then sees apes helping humans, and so he's like pissed off at the situation, and then bumps into the guy's son, and that is not well received. He immediately like tries to like threaten him, and that's when like Maurice, being amazing, steps in to protect.
But yes, so then they have that fight. Then they kind of make up ape not kill ape, which had a pretty explosive. This movie ends in a way that I was like, wow. Once again, because I'm so devoted now to this series and devoted to the rules that Ceasar at the end of this movie, when he lets him go and says, you're not an ape, I was seriously like, oh my gosh, he's done like the unforgivable thing. I mean, he sort of justifies it, but is that okay? Will there be repercussions? I don't know, but I love this movie.
That's the greatest part about this franchise. Like, it loves building on itself in fucking insane ways.
Yeah.
Like, again, the second movie, the planet is destroyed. We got to make a sequel.
Yeah. So they left like a minute before it was destroyed, and they go back. Like, it's just it's good sci-fi,
they
man.
Yes, and so much. It's like, all right, so it was Earth all along. Yes, and more people are coming. Yes, and the planet blows up. Yes, and some of them went to the past. Yes, and they have a child, and that starts off the whole revolution. Yes, and I guess there are mutants now, and so we have a battle. Yes, and
which please do not spoil this for me, because I have to experience it on my own. But you heard my enthusiasm for the mutants.
I mean, I was just doing the original movies just there. Like, I was
yes, exactly. But I'm just saying, I want those mutants in the new movies. I want them, if they're not in War, I want them in Kingdom. If they're not in Kingdom, I want them in, whatever next movie they make. But I gotta get me more mutants. I love the mutants, and I love that they worship a bomb.
With you. It's so great. The journey that you are on, and you and Jordan are on together in this, is so incredible to watch, and especially to know you as a movie audience. To take in, and so like it's exciting for me to like have moments with this franchise. And like, we're pretty deep into it. Like, this whole franchise has been like, oh, I can't wait till they get to this movie. Oh, I can't wait till they get to that movie. And now we're at Dawn.
Well, we just got one more. Got one more. We're full on. I mean, we actually made the deadline. We have our tickets May 9th to see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Like, we're there Thursday night, baby. Like, I am so bought in on this whole thing. I actually kind of feel like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes could maybe be like slightly better than Burton, and I'd be like, yeah, that's probably like my second favorite movie of the year, just barely below Dune. Like I'm at this level now with this series where I can't even be critical about it.
I'm so curious how this movie's going to go, because like they have such a giant reputation to build upon.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out. I'm excited. It looks really interesting. And I can't imagine that you would approach a Planet of the Apes movie without trying to like get somewhere in the deep. Because that's just what this franchise is built on, where, let's have society striated between different castes, and we'll represent them by having different species of ape. Okay. Yep. That's like, and the original author thought it was a silly work. Like, that was just for fun. Like, that's,
oh man,
that's how insane we get here on this whole franchise.
So they get the lights back on. We have the Koba gun steal, which we already talked about, and then I think this is when Koba goes and he attempts to assassinate Ceasar.
Well, he lays a couple seeds beforehand to like make sure that he has the authority. Like, he talks to Blue Eyes, and he's like like Caesar doesn't trust me anymore, but I'm worried that the humans are going to kill Caesar.
Right.
Is what he like conveys to Blue Eyes, so that like when he puts the thinnest facade in terms of like making it look like humans were responsible for it, that Blue Eyes is the one who's like championing like human gun, like humans have killed my father, like.
And again, I just want to point out to the audience and to you that a lot of times, especially with blockbusters, I'm not talking like, not when I'm watching like a Paul Thomas Anderson movie or something like that, but with movies in this genre and this field, I'm often like, oh yeah, they wrote that so that this will happen because that's how you write a script, and then the script does this, and then the script does this. But this movie, like, I keep just getting caught up in the moments and completely off guard by them. So when Koba shot him, I was dumbfounded, speechless. And I was like, okay, I know Caesar's in the next movie, but I'm concerned. And then when they see the gun, it was like, as they were discovering it, I was like, oh, okay. He set up, like, I wasn't putting together the pieces until the movie like said, here are the pieces. And I feel like I'm a pretty smart movie watcher, but I'm so invested that I'm just like there for the story.
Well, and that's pretty much the moment where we'd like cut back to the humans that are in the community, and Maurice looks and goes, run.
Maurice.
It's the only time Maurice talks in this movie. It's just
so
like, that's
good.
perfect. It's just like,
it's so good. And yeah, then it's like the absolute chaos. And I mean, I'm assuming War will also do this, but judging by this and the Batman, Matt Reeves is real good with action. It's very clear. You really understand the space and the geography in ways that often filmmakers in this genre and level don't exercise as much as I wish they would. Because this whole attack that Koba leads on the humans it's absolutely epic. It's a feast for the eyes. It's
there's
devastating.
a oneer at some point in there?
Tank oneer?
Yeah.
The tank oneer? Are you joking me? And I know, it's mostly visual effects, but there's a technical aspect to that. And there's sometimes movies get lost in the oneers. And I love a good oneer that does the Spielberg thing where you change the framing so it feels like you actually went to separate shots. And the tank is a perfect way to do that because every time it goes to a different area, it almost feels like, oh yeah, they cut to that. But no, it's just one fluid shot. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? How do you not love this movie? Why didn't I go see this movie?
I just noticed that, like, I haven't really paid too much attention to the actor who played, but Koba in this, because I know it's an actor switch between between Rise and this. I just was like, wait, I recognize that name. Holy shit, it's Dr. Doom from Fantastic.
Oh, okay. Because I was seeing him like in the mocap suit, and I was like, what do I know this guy from? And when I looked it up, that didn't pop up as like one of his first things.
No, it's not like what anyone references when they talk about Toby Kebbell. But like the Wikipedia like pop-up doesn't include it. But I'm like, wait a second. I recognize this person. I know that picture from Comic-Con that they're showing. Oh, that's from Fantastic. Right before that drops.
And you know what? That's actually a mercy to him. I'm glad that they don't include that in this top Wikipedia.
Especially considering, like, we've talked about the fantastic performances on this one. Also, wait a second. Judy Greer was Cornelia, the Caesar's wife.
Which I am assuming that I would have already said this in the episode, but this goes into a classic thing. I think she could definitely have more agency, as you pointed out. That's a great point. It kind of works for the movie, but we can always use some better representation, even if it is different species. But it goes into the classic thing that I wish people would stop doing. Judy Greer is such an incredible actress.
I love her
so much. And she's always someone that is like, for the level she's at, she's basically like a D character in like everything she's in. And I'm like, why? Why do you have her show up at the beginning of Jurassic World and then the end of Jurassic World and do nothing with the great Judy Greer? Why do you have her in this as just, lying there for the movie? It's Judy Greer.
Right?
Like is Arrested Development the only series like thing that actually takes advantage of her talents?
Right? I saw that it was
drives
Judy
me
Greer, and I
nuts.
was like, wait a second. And I know I probably knew this before, like just for the record. But
Yeah.
seeing that name and then just reacting, being like, it's Judy Greer, and she's Cornelia,
Yeah.
in this movie.
But I give this one a pass because it's also, it's such a strange movie. It's just cool to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird and strange, but it is we got to stop doing this to Judy.
Yeah.
I love Judy, and I want to see better for her. Maybe she loves it. Maybe she loves, I don't know, but I feel like she deserves a better career than the one she's been given.
Well, so before the ape attack occurs, we get this wonderful scene of humanity sort of celebrating the lights coming back on. We get everyone who had a thing plugged in case it ever came back on or for whatever charge they could get. I'm assuming that they've turned the power on a couple of times with the generators for whatever reasons, and so people have that's why stuff's plugged in the first place. So it's not like this is the first time since the pandemic that everyone is seeing pictures of their loved ones and so forth. But we get a
and
great
while they're
scene.
dancing, it keeps cutting to Neo and Trinity as they're getting it on.
Right, exactly. I mean, we certainly get the musical sequences like that.
Anyway, I had to.
I do love that even the guy with the gun, I forgot his name. Who was it, Carver? He hears the music in the distance and is really happy when he hears it.
Oh yeah.
Those moments of civilized life in the post-apocalypse is really enticing. So we get that whole sequence with the people in San Francisco really celebrating that the lights have come back on, and we get Dreyfus, Gary Oldman's character, responding to his iPad getting power so he can scroll through the pictures of his family. And there's so much in such little time of him just seeing his family and crying, and these are trailer moments for a reason. It is such a distilled characterization right there.
And you're getting this in the same year that Matthew McConaughey is going to be responding to seeing his daughter grow up in Interstellar. I mean, what a year for looking at a screen and seeing your family.
Yeah.
What was in the water there?
I mean, I guess there's probably something about the rise of iPads and so forth that played into how we were all imagining. Oh, all the pictures are now just technological ones, man. If we lose power, we lose our families.
Okay, and now the episode is over. No,
but we get an equivalent scene with Caesar later on, with the power restored when Caesar so spoiler for everyone, Caesar's not dead. They find his body and they try to find a safe haven for him, and he's like, wait, this fucking place, it's where I grew up. And they're all no, sure, we're not used to you talking that way, Caesar, but yeah, we'll come in here. And while they're there and he's recovering, he has he plays the DV tapes of that James Franco recorded of him growing up, and has this huge nostalgia storyline going into this whole thing, and it's kind of wild to go face to face with where his roots are and how far he's come and what he represents now. He has lived the role of being the ape alpha for how many years, and to be reminded of this is the cultivation that led me to these steps. That same YouTube channel I referenced before, Story Street, the video that they do on Rise is really good because they talk about the symbolism of that star window, that, or the light burst kind of design window, and how Caesar clings to it when he's first taken into the ape sanctuary, and then erases it when he tries to rebel and move on, that's part of his emotional journey, where the window out was the little bit of freedom he was given growing up, and we don't see it because it's seems to be a loving, happy experience for him, but at the same time he is a slave.
Yeah.
And that was like the little bit of freedom that he was being given growing up, and that's the thing that he clung to. And then realizing that like that what he really wanted was true freedom, had to like give up the thing that he had been like bound to so much so, and then to like face it like head on here is a wild kind of dynamic right there. Like it's just a reminder of like, remember when things were stable, when like the people you loved were around you, but you were a slave.
Yeah. But and he keeps it, you know, it's in the village that they've established too. It's etched in a stone. So, you know, he is carrying it around with him everywhere.
Yeah, that's his trauma that he carries with him.
So good. Once again, what does this movie do? I can't quite remember.
Fucking rocks.
It rocks. But and also again, like the visuals cannot be praised enough. He's nearing death. And you know, they're having to do like surgery and heal him. They made him look so bad. And I mean bad, like physically ill. And I can't even wrap my head around like making a realistic looking human ape and then going, okay, how do we make him look like he's about to die in his face? And somehow Weta did it. Yep. I just can't even, I have no understanding of that.
It's such a good movie. The effects are so good in this movie. Especially in terms of like what they are capturing. Like I said, the compositing, sometimes you can see the lines, but at the same time, what carries forth is so incredible.
Yeah. And so now, you know, his son comes and he's like, things have gotten bad. This is not what I thought it was. And also, I didn't know you were alive, and you're alive, so that's awesome. And so now it's like they need to go rescue Maurice and the other people who can't be trusted to follow Koba. Which also, Koba kills Ash in this movie at one point.
Yeah.
And that was so brutal. And again, this is something that I was nervous about with these new movies, as I was like, the old movies, whether you think they're cheesy or not, have like a brutality to them that I think is really essential to how the stories are told. I mean, they blew up the entire world in the second movie. So it's like, these movies are intense. I don't want them to be neutered to where like most PG-13 action movies are. And I'm not saying it has to be like this graphic thing, but having stuff like this in the movie, showing a monkey like cold-blooded murder another monkey, it's like, that is, you're keeping the spirit of the series alive. Yep. Because that's always been there. So that was brutal. And again, I'm so invested in the story at that point. I'm just like shocked by every twist and turn. And then they go and they rescue Maurice and the humans. They get them out. And I can't remember what it was, but pointing out great use of the PG-13 F word in this movie. Gary Oldman gets it. I don't remember what he says, but I love a good PG-13 F word.
I don't remember specifically, but hey,
it just felt right.
Yeah,
it just felt right. And all of this climaxes in Ceasar has to take his throne back, and he has to stop what's going on. And in order to do this, he must fight Koba. And meanwhile, Gary Oldman's like, we're setting charges C4 and we're blowing this place up because we have to save humanity. And again, it's like, I don't feel like Oldman is the bad guy of this.
No.
I just don't feel like anyone is.
I mean, Koba the most, but even then, again,
it's so understandable.
Human work,
except for killing
does
Ash.
really traumatic things. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like killing, like Koba goes too far. The second Koba takes power, he goes crazy with it. Like, killing Ash is like clearly the line. And that's the line that like Blue Eyes recognizes because it's like Ash is his best friend.
Yeah.
But like losing Ash is the point where like, oh, Koba, oh man, Koba's lost it. Fuck, shit. Sorry, I didn't see that coming. I just thought it was crazy. It was cool, crazy Uncle Koba. But now I see Koba just murdered my friend for choosing not to murder someone.
Yeah, that's the rub. But yeah, so they have this big battle, Koba and Ceasar. It's wonderful. I mean, it is great, and it ends in the the world or the tower being destroyed, and it crumbles a little bit, but not enough to destroy them all because they haven't set all the charges yet.
Right.
And then Ceasar is holding Koba, and I'm thinking he's going to show him mercy, and maybe this will bite him in the next movie. This is what I'm thinking.
For listeners at home, this is very much like the Mufasa hanging with like Scar coming up to him kind of like sequence. Like Koba is just barely hanging on from falling to his death, and like Ceasar has taken his hand, and then
Koba says ape not kill ape, and he says you're not an ape, and he lets him go. And I was astounded by this. I was it's not I don't know if that's the right decision, Ceasar. That's a little scary. You broke the peace amongst the apes, but maybe you needed to do it. I don't know. And that's part of the joy of this series.
I mean, from the standpoint of like, if this is like a Hammurabian, like eye for an eye, like Koba has killed ape. Like that has already occurred. But is it going to be perceived that way? And is Ceasar going to perceive it that way for himself? Like, even if he makes the proclamation that like Koba was not an ape before doing so. So it's, like fully declaring like you're open game and here you go. You're dead. Ceasar is still going to have to live with that decision in the long run. And that I think is so interesting because like, it's not just that like people saw the relationship between Ceasar and Koba. Ceasar experienced the relationship with him and Koba. Koba was his best friend. Koba was his brother.
Yeah.
And like for them to part ways so far that Ceasar lets him go and fall to his death, like that is brutal emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rich text. It should be studied for years to come.
Kind of,
and it will lead to war.
It's this is why I can't wait for the next episode, frankly. Like I'm on this one, but like I just really want to see how you and Jordan respond to the rest of this franchise, because this franchise is so good, and has done such a good job up until this point. Again, there are clunkers and there are famous clunkers, so we are all on board for the existence of clunkers in this franchise. But when this movie is hitting on all cylinders, it is hitting so far above its weight class.
I mean, home runs, to mix the sports metaphors.
Right?
Yeah. So I'll reserve, my conclusion for when Jordan joins back. But do you have any final words on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes?
So Dawn is the one that was allowed to be kind of whatever from the standpoint of like as a prequel goes. It didn't have to end at any one spot. It didn't have to like come from any one spot. Like it could have been like a little bit further down the line. It could have been wherever.
Sure. Yeah.
Rise is very much like we are setting up the start of the Planet of the Apes franchise. This one, the end point could have been peace. Like the end, obviously they weren't going to do peace because like we need to like keep setting up that humanity and ape are going to be at war of some kind. But this is the one where the events of the movie are almost irrelevant, like in the broader sense of things. Like humanity and apes like clashed. It makes me think of in Star Trek. There's this whole thing in the episode First Contact where Picard like describes like the first contact with Klingons, where humanity didn't do so hot and it was disastrous, and that led to a lot of war going on. We never really needed to see it because we could just kind of imagine that things didn't go great. The events of this movie could have been wherever. The things that are important about it are the relationships between Ceasar and Koba, between Ceasar and Malcolm, between Malcolm and Dreyfus. Like all these characters are these incredible performances captured and put out there with these wonderful bits of Shakespearean drama, infused with apes dual wielding machine guns on horseback. And you know, again, the series contains multitudes. But this is the one where if you really wanted that, like the deep, like, performance from a lot of people, and like that like inertia just pushing you all towards conflict, this is the movie for that.
Yeah.
And it's the best character study movie outside of arguably the original in terms of like Taylor's character study, that the franchise has, and it's so good. I love it. I love the series in general. I love this movie a lot. It competes to be. It usually wins out in terms of the best of the Circus trilogy for me, and the Circus trilogy is like kind of like neck and neck with the original Planet of the Apes movie for like best in the series. Not that Conquest isn't that close, and nor Escape. Like I love those movies really a lot as well. It's just different metrics when we're talking about movies from the 60s and 70s versus the movies from like the 2000s, like in all regards.
Right.
So
right.
This movie is just shockingly good, and like you have wonderful performances from everyone out of it, and this huge drama that has an ape fight in a skyscraper, like an incomplete skyscraper. Like it's perfect.
How can you not love that?
It's so close to
it's so got close something to, like, for everybody.
Yeah, like, god damn it. I just love it. This movie's so fucking rad. It's just so fucking rad. This movie rocks. It just rocks.
It just rocks. And with that, please let us know where we can find you, and what people can do to have more Case in their life.
Yeah, so the easiest thing, or check out the stuff that I'm doing podcast wise. So I host Another Pass and Men of Steel, both of which you can find wherever you get your podcasts or at certainpov.com. You can find those on YouTube these days at Certain POV Media, where you can also find the videos I do on Superman Analogs. So check all that out, because that's really cool. I did set up a Ko-fi. Ko-fi. I say coffee, but I realize that like some people say not that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I set that up recently, and if you just search for Case Aiken, you'll find me. That's a cool spot. You can actually subscribe there, and you can get shout outs on my own shows. But yeah. Another Pass, Men of Steel. Those are my two podcasts. And then on the socials, I am at Case Aiken, except for Instagram, where I'm at Quetzalcoatl5, because I am holding on to my AIM screen name for dear life, because I was a pretentious mythology nerd and a Legion of Superheroes nerd, even in high school. So check me out there. But yeah, that's all of them, like the socials and the podcast and the YouTube. Yeah. You'll find me. Like, if you type in Case Aiken, you'll find me.
Yeah, and we're gonna have that stuff linked in the show notes of the show, so you can just scroll on down for your convenience.
And you know why you'll be doing that? It's because you're a gentleman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for coming on, Case, and for you listeners, there's still more to come.
Okay.
How about that? What a movie.
I listened to every second of it.
You really should, though. We had a good conversation.
I should, and I will.
And you need to.
Is that a threat?
Or else. Now it's a threat. It wasn't, and now it is. Yeah, so final thoughts on this movie. But if you want to dig into a lot of stuff,
final thoughts on this movie, Koba Koba Doba Doba. On this movie.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love characters like this where they're the bad guy, but you just want to hug them and tell them that it's okay.
He wouldn't let you, though, because you're a human.
I know. But it's okay to be angry.
Yeah. And the rabbit listened.
The rabbit listened. Exactly. Yeah, the performance was just out of this world. The first time he goes to do recon on the guns and sees everything, and those guys catch him. And I thought, like, okay, this is the scene where he's gonna kill one of them and run away.
That's what I thought,
be like,
too.
an ape did it, or they're gonna kill one of his other apes that came with him, and then
so clever that's not what happens.
No, and guys, if you haven't seen this movie, you're gonna think this is like, what are you talking about? Watch the freaking movie. He talks his way out of it.
Yeah.
The ape talks his way out of it, and he doesn't use words, and he talks his way out of it.
Yeah.
You gotta watch it to believe it. This fictional movie. It's insane. And then when he comes back later, and the guys are like, oh, he wandered back in, and those guys are drinking, and they're like, I think he wants to play with us. Both of those guys' performance, incredible.
They did a great job. They really pop in 2 scenes.
They really did. Great use of extras in this movie.
Yeah. And one of the guys is from Breaking Bad, so he popped extra more because I was like, who is that guy?
He popped extra hard. And
he was popping.
When Koba is pretending to be funny, joking, everything, and then he just shoots them in cold blood. Something about it was way more chilling than any other movie.
Well, and so, folks, I may repeat myself on stuff I mentioned with Case, but this movie has a brutality to it that not a lot of PG-13 movies do, and it's not even, I would not say this is a graphic movie, but there is a seriousness, there's an earnestness, and there's no winking at the camera.
No.
And I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful that it is like, we're taking this seriously, even though it's ape people, and we're going to have like him throw Ash off the balcony, and you're going to feel it. I don't know how you pull that off. I really don't know how you pull that off.
Ape killed ape. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
That was wild. Oh, he was so scary. Koba
doba doba.
And then one of the coolest shots was during
Koba doba broba.
broba. During the beginning of the battle, he gets on top. So the tank rolls in, and it's like, oh, these apes are effed. And it's already not going well. I think they do well of establishing, especially through Blue Eye's perspective.
Oh, yeah. Switching to his perspective for that whole battle. Brilliant.
Unbelievable. And he's seeing everything, witnessing all these apes being killed. And he's like, this is not what we're doing. We made the wrong decision. Yeah. And then the tank rolls in, and especially it's like, they're going to be decimated. Yeah. And I'm like, what possibly could the next movie be about? Yeah. If it's like placed directly after.
Yeah.
And then Koba gets on the tank, and I was like, I for some reason didn't even consider that was a possibility. Yeah. It kills everyone in the tank, and then is... just the way the shot is, it's just tracking him on the tank, doing a 360 shot. And it was like, stop. And I think because so many, blockbuster movies are mediocre, which I think is important because if all of them were great, you got to have variety. But this one just being so freaking good, it was just like, it was so unexpected. You know what I mean? So it makes it even better than better.
Oh, yeah. It's like your friend says, hey, I'm going to cook a meal, and you have it, and you're like, I could eat this in a restaurant. This is so good. I thought you were just going to make, like, burritos for dinner or something.
Yeah.
You made me, like, a 5-course meal. You know? This thing, it is incredible. And I hope, but I just don't know. I hope that in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I always talk about in the trailer how the orangutan throws the food. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's Maurice? Do you remember?
No, I don't think so. I have a feeling that one takes place pretty far in the future.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel because in the one trailer that I've seen, no human talks from my memory. Not that, and maybe they do.
Yeah,
and they're all
true.
like wearing the clothing that they wear like in the first movies. So I just can't even imagine.
I'm also struggling to. So in our discussion, Case said that he kind of goes back and forth between whichever of these 3 movies he's watching as his favorite, but he's pretty sure Dawn is his favorite. But I'm like, so War is at least debatably as good as this, and it's like,
I'm not even ready for it.
I don't know. I don't know how that works.
And then when they go to when Ceasar shot and he takes them to the house that he grew up in, not expecting that, and it worked in this movie. Usually, I think it would be like eye rolly when he's like watching the video tape with him and James Franco.
No,
and it worked for me. I think I'm also I think I've said this in the last episode. Like I'm at a point where I'm gonna love these movies no matter what.
Well, and so.
But also,
Case asked this, and we were talking about it. Was like that. How did this movie strike you in any way parentally? Now that you're a parent,
No.
No, okay. I was kind of just like I was saying as well that I sort of just feel more and understand the emotions more in movies when there's parental things.
Yeah, I guess if I'm thinking about it now, yeah, and I think what's really interesting about his character is he's so, I mean, honestly, mature now. Duh. He's commanding all these apes. He's a king.
Yeah.
And his throne is usurped. And where does he go? He goes back to his roots. I mean, we've seen this story a million times.
Yeah.
And he
almost
sees
Shakespearean.
Yes. And he sees where he's come from.
Yeah.
And it's not like I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, maybe he did. He has kind of forgotten where he's from.
But he has the window in the camp, too.
Yeah. So I think it's like he's looking back and pining for simpler times.
Yeah.
Because everything's gotten so messy and complicated. And it's like, you're doing this with apes?
Yeah.
And it's working?
And I'm feeling it?
Oh, it's so good. And especially when Jason Clarke comes in the room and he's like, this was a good man just like you. And it was like, wow, I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Man.
Yeah.
It's just lovely.
I think I still agree with this Rise and Dawn that what these movies have that I don't think the older ones have is a lot more heart.
Oh yeah.
I do think you feel much stronger and more for the characters. I think the other ones just lay way more into the philosophy of things.
Yeah.
And discussing the issues. And this one is a lot more just about the emotions behind it.
Yeah, well,
because they're both
sort of like
also character driven, but
right.
Yeah.
All the old movies, you cannot watch them, and like you have to watch them and be like, yeah, those movies are very political and very philosophical.
Yeah,
like you can't just be like, oh, why can't they just turn off their brain? And these movies, I don't think you can really turn off your brain with them, but you can watch them at a baseline and just like follow the story. Whereas like the actual like elements of the previous movie stories, it's integral to how the story is told. Like you just can't divorce the two. And again, I don't think you can with these movies either, but they do kind of feel a like you could maybe trick someone into watching these.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, whereas, you know, maybe you couldn't with the old movies.
Yeah. It's just, I feel like it's so hard to do it in blockbusters and it's hard to do it and not make it boring.
Yeah.
Or to get people to be like on board with it, I guess maybe. But like there's so many gray areas that they cover in this movie, more than the last one for sure, where you do sympathize with everyone and you understand why Koba makes the choices that he makes, or Gary Oldman makes the choices, or even Ceasar. Like he is getting to a point where it's like maybe he is being too trustful of humans. Like Jason Clarke's good, but for the best of his people. It's just you're watching it and you're like, there's no way everyone can win. There's just no way.
Yeah,
and it
presents war. It's actually kind of an advantage to know that War for the Planet of the Apes is coming, because there's an element of like, you know,
it's inevitable.
It's inevitable in certain conflicts.
Simply humans and apes discovering each other at the beginning of this movie. That was it. That was. Nothing's ever going to be the same
and then
again.
You think about wars throughout time and all that stuff, and it's like, what, you know, was peace so close within its grasp, but someone like packed a gun when they shouldn't have, and that's why, you know, World War II happened. Like, I know that there's so much more. I'm not trying to like downgrade
but I do think
these
this
wars,
shows the simplicity as well as the complexity.
Yeah,
where you do see that it was like, if you're looking at time and you're seeing it as a straight line, there was no way this wasn't going to happen at a certain point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah,
Matt Reeves, keep making movies. I'm excited for the Batman 2 Part 2. Please make it Mr. Freeze, and
please make it Mr. Freeze.
Or do a new character.
Yeah, do the Mad Hatter. No. Do Anarchy. That's what I want.
Yeah. That would also work. I mean, Gotham's lawless already, basically. So
it was just so cool reading about him in Nightfall.
I know, yeah, and he's cool in the video games too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, is that everything?
Yep.
Did we dawn?
We dawned.
Well, thank you so much for listening and attending this very special episode. An evening with hello. Next week Wait, is next week War or is it our 5-year anniversary episode? It might be our 5-year anniversary episode, which is, of course, wait a second. Yes, next week is our 5-year anniversary episode. And last night we would have seen Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So
Ooh.
next week we are doing There Will Be Blood.
And there will.
And there will. And then after that, it's War and then Kingdom. I know Kingdom, that'll be like 3 weeks into its run, but bear with us. You know, we had to fill this in, and we got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.